Theory, welcome back. Let's talk about talking about talking. A dialogue. What if the key to revolution was just making friends and chatting it out? What if we formed genuine relationships with the people around us? What if we approached these relationships as opportunities to learn from each other? What if we took these relationships and formed groups to solve our everyday problems? What if we took those groups and we formed groups of groups where we shared what we're working on and how successful it's going? What if we made groups of groups of groups and we sent those people to fix the government? What if we made groups of groups of groups of groups? This is the transactive theory of planning. Here, planners and non-planners form meaningful relationships for the purpose of learning from each other. No one person in the relationship has all the answers themselves, but together, they expand each other's understanding. The transactive theory is our first theory that actually envisions a completely different mode of planning. The theory is complex, but it's not complicated. Let's go through it. In 1973, John Friedmann published the book Retracting America, a Theory of Transactive Planning. Friedmann is legendary in urban planning. He was a prolific writer primarily concerned with theory. In my experience and research, he's a little difficult to categorize. In 1973, John Friedmann was not especially far left, but he did move quite a bit further left over time. Sometimes he's grouped with radical planners, and sometimes he's grouped with more conservative thinkers. The latter is probably because his work inspired the most neoliberal theory, communicative planning. Retracting America came out the same year that Grabow and Heskin released the first radical planning theory paper. It was a big year for nerds. While he was writing this book, Norman Krumholtz and his planning staff in Cleveland were developing and testing the equity planning theory. However, they didn't release a document on their work until 1975, 2 years after Retracting America. Paul Davidoff's work on advocacy and pluralism had been out for 8 years prior to this book, but none of that work is cited within. I think it's safe to say that neither of those theories had much bearing on the development of transactive planning. Friedmann instead focuses on incrementalism and the starting point of all of these theories, rational comprehensive theory. Friedmann, like most planning theorists, was not a fan of rational comprehensive planning. Check out my video on that if you're unsure or don't remember what it entails. He describes rational comprehensive planners as arrogant shut-ins, disdainful of public opinion, which honestly is still like half of all planners today. Unlike rational comprehensive planners, Friedmann did not believe that we could accurately predict the future. He believed that modeling and forecasting locks us into predictable cycles of our own making. Instead of attempting to solve societal problems by doing something new, relying on forecasting forces us to make decisions based on data about the past. He also applied this logic to more experiential and anecdotal decision-making. When we apply our past experiences to guide the future, we expect that the future will play out just as the past did. To put it another way, just because something happened a certain way in the past doesn't mean we should expect or desire it to happen that way in the future. Friedmann rejects this cycle and called for a new method of future thinking. The foundation of this way of thinking lies in Friedmann's concept of mutual learning. Mutual learning is when expert knowledge is combined with experiential knowledge. Friedmann separates the holders of these types of knowledge into planners and clients. Clients can be the public, organizations, institutions, corporations, the government. Anyone who needs to make a decision outside of their realm of expertise is a client. And regarding knowledge, Friedmann prefers the terms process knowledge, which is expert knowledge, and personal knowledge, which is experiential. Friedmann didn't think either form of knowledge was superior to the other. Process knowledge is generalized and it can't tell you anything on its own. It has to be interpreted. That interpretation is greatly limited by the individual interpreting it. Personal knowledge, on the other hand, can't be generalized. It typically can't be applied to outside situations. However, when combined, personal knowledge brings process knowledge to life. It humanizes it. And process knowledge can bring personal knowledge to action. It contextualizes personal knowledge and helps to identify the source of the issue at hand. Friedmann describes the difference between personal knowledge and process knowledge as the knowledge gap. He believed this gap had significant impacts on society. Friedmann calls the societal decision-making body the guidance system. The guidance system is made up of guiding institutions. There's no comprehensive list of institutions. Essentially, any group that has power in the decision-making process is a guiding institution. This could be the mayor, a transit agency, the public works department, a CEO, the Chamber of Commerce, city council, a well-organized community group, a housing nonprofit. Guiding institutions operate somewhat autonomously and they pursue their own goals and interests. A planner is the central coordinator of guiding institutions in theory. Well, not in this theory. Friedmann would agree that a planner's primary skill is learning rapidly and proposing comprehensive changes, but no one really listens to urban planners, for better or worse. As Friedmann puts it, planners have neither the responsibility nor the power to act on their own recommendations. So, as the planner is screeching in the background, "Stop, listen to me, please!" the guiding institutions continue to pursue their interests. The unintended consequences of multiple independent actions are called collective phenomena. These phenomena can't be addressed directly. Their exact origin is unknown. They can only be resolved by addressing the structure of the guidance system. Friedmann illustrates this by talking about the free market. He discusses how the free market is uninterested in taking responsibility for its environmental impacts. The free market's profit motive results in many collective phenomena like pollution, traffic, and displacement. To address these collective phenomena, a government may pass regulations, but Friedmann argues that those regulations will always slip in favor of the more powerful interest, the free market in this case. By directly acting on the collective phenomena, the government is only temporarily solving the problem. It will manifest later. The free market will always have the drive to maximize profit, and that pursuit will always lead to environmental consequences, the collective phenomena. Friedmann gives two main reasons for why America is not addressing collective phenomena through structural change. The first is an unwillingness to incorporate the needs and values of the oppressed into planning. The other is an inability to imagine a different future. The consequences of not addressing these issues structurally are dire. He writes, "Unless we are able to devise new ways of fitting planning into the context of American society, making it consistent with new values of person-centeredness, authenticity, existential commitment, and communal life, but also the conditions of knowing, we are in danger of following the roads that lead to repression, stagnation, or breakdown." It's a little Lorax. Friedmann and the Lorax have a lot of things in common. Friedmann stops short of a full critique of capitalism, but he's more than hinting at the need to move away from it. I think he must have seen the groundwork laid for the neoliberal shift, which would start just a few years after he published Retracting America. However, he keeps his optimism. Friedmann had a lot of faith in youth culture. He anticipated that they would maintain their rebellious nature and fight for change. But this demographic, the youth of 1973, those are the baby boomers. This change didn't happen, and we're still all living with it. Things aren't good. I would even go as far to say as things are bad, actually, but the optimism that Friedmann had in the following chapters is still inspirational. Let's talk about how Friedmann believes transactive planning could lead us out of all of this. Let's recall mutual learning. Through engaging with the other, we change, we grow, we learn. Now, I want to be clear, John Friedmann and I are not advocating that everybody hold hands and get along. I don't think that's the spirit of his theory. I don't think he's suggesting that black people and white supremacists enter dialogue. But where it's safe, I think dialogue and mutual learning is a means to pull people out of hateful, bigoted mindsets. Friedmann describes a type of relationship necessary for mutual learning and calls it the life of dialogue. The life of dialogue is the same as any meaningful relationship. By engaging in the life of dialogue and building authentic relationships, we're able to learn from others and grow into more complete and knowledgeable people ourselves. Friedmann describes the life of dialogue like this: we can be open and alert to the other, whoever he may be. We can accept him as a person different from ourselves without being threatening or feeling threatened in turn. We can try to hold our intellectual, moral, affective, and empathetic states of being in mutual tension. We can accept conflict as an inevitable part of dialogue and not its termination. We can look for the patterns of shared interests. And we can concentrate the life of dialogue on the here and now. The life of dialogue opens us up to mutual learning. We can learn how people perceive the world, their thoughts, their fears, their goals, their hopes, all by talking to them earnestly. When we approach each other without any agenda except to get to know each other, we can more easily work together. When we know each other authentically, we can trust that the other is acting in good faith, that they aren't manipulating or placating us. And most importantly, we can develop a vision of a different future together and then work together to make it happen. The life of dialogue also fits well into radical planning theory. The idea that we're both equals and that we're both individuals and members of a larger community is pretty rad. Finally, we'll discuss what transactive planning would look like in practice. It's not exactly possible right now. No planner is a transactive planner because the guidance system would require major changes to allow that. Friedmann outlines a cellular structure that can scale as needed. The first level of the structure is the working group. These groups are temporary, small-scale, interpersonal, inclusive, self-guiding, and responsible. They address a particular issue and dissolve thereafter or reorganize to address a new issue. Working groups convene with other working groups of similar natures through working group assemblies. These assemblies allow each working group to test their personal knowledge against the personal knowledge of others. Here, Friedmann introduces the technical secretariat, groups that bring process knowledge to the assembly. The technical secretariat is responsible for reporting, monitoring, evaluating, and providing assistance. They also put personal knowledge to test against process knowledge. Finally, representatives from the working group assemblies convene as part of a supra-corporate assembly. These are groups that take all of the knowledge gained from working groups and working group assemblies and apply it through structural changes. Mutual learning through dialogue occurs at all levels of this structure. Friedmann believed that children should be educated on transactive planning early, primarily through teaching them to value the process of interpersonal exchange and societal duty. He believed that eventually between 1/5 to 1/3 of the entire adult population would be involved in working groups. Many people would be involved in several working groups at a time. By transferring decision-making power to people in dialogue with each other, Friedmann believed that society would have control over itself and would better achieve its own aspirations. I actually like transactive planning theory as a whole. I think it has some major shortcomings regarding power, mostly that it doesn't address it much. I also have a bad taste in my mouth regarding communicative planning, which basically takes transactive theory and removes its more revolutionary elements. I think Friedmann offers a unique way to organize decision-making, and I do recommend that you read the book if any of this was interesting to you. So, in review, transactive planning theory is based on interpersonal relationships. It's concerned with significant structural change and driven by a desire to create a better world. Transactive planning theory is built on mutual learning, which combines process knowledge with personal knowledge. Transactive planning would be implemented through a hierarchy of working groups, working group assemblies, and supra-corporate assemblies. Transactive theory requires a re-education of the populace to instill the values of communication into society. Thanks so much for watching this one, I really appreciate it. We're almost done with this theory series. Next up will be the big one, radical planning theory, and you'll finally know what I'm talking about. Please share this video if you think someone urgently needs to hear about the transactive theory of planning. Like and subscribe, and I'll see you later.